English tense can be a real pain to deal with, and there will be tense errors on the SAT, though while sometimes they can be somewhat complex, other times it's actually pretty straightforward. And the main thing with tense errors are really just a kind of an agreement error. In other words, all of the tenses in a sentence should match or at the very least be consistent. So for example, when John was ill, he eats rice. Well, wait a minute. John was ill, so this is in the past. So it doesn't make sense to say that when he was ill, he eats rice, because that's present. So we would prefer this to be ate. How about this? 3 years ago, John leaves for Spain. Well, again, this happened 3 years ago. It's in the past. So really it should be John left for Spain. So here are the two indications, right? Either other verbs in the sentence, such here as was, will tell you that it's past tense or whatever tense you're in. Other times you have a time cue that will tell you what tense your verb is in. So let's talk about the 12 kinds of tenses in the English language. I made this handy dandy table, which I'm going to fill in with some information in a second. The main ones you need to know, actually, I'll do that at the end, which ones you really need to know. So let's just go over these tenses. Let's start with the present, simple present tense. All right, this is the basic. I swim, he swims. I walk, he walks. I don't know why it says walked. It should be walks. Right, just the basic, simple present, happening now kind of thing. This one is going to appear sometimes on the SAT, so one of the ones you need to know. So simple present is an important one. How about simple past? So this is just the basic I swam, or he swam, or I walked, or he walked. Again, another one that will appear on the SAT. How about simple future? It doesn't come up too much, but enough that we should mark it down as something that we should know about. And this is something that's happening, as you might expect, in the future. So notice here we don't have an ending that tells us that. We use an auxiliary or helping verb, and we'll talk about that in a later video. But I will swim, I am going to walk, right? States my intentions, what I'm going to be doing. So that's your simple past, present, future, no problem. Let's get into some of the more complex ones. How about the continuous? So the continuous shows simultaneity. It shows things happening at the same time. And it often shows where those things happening at the same time are interrupted. So this is about interruptions, things being interrupted. As I was doing something, this happened. So let's look at some examples. How about the present continuous? I am eating when John calls me. Strange sentence, but you're very hard pressed to find a situation where you might write that or say that. But yeah, I am eating, right? So this is our continuous tense here. I am eating when John calls me, right? Shows that interruption. I was eating when the phone rang. Again, this is something that happened in the past. There's some continuous event. I was eating when the phone rang, right? Again, interrupted. I will be eating when the movie starts. Again, in the future, I will be doing this action continuously, but then it will be interrupted, or at least something else will happen during that period to show that simultaneity, right? These don't come up too often. There's a couple exceptions, which I go into a little more detail in the grammar tactics video, but it just pays to know what that means. The continuous tense is all about simultaneity, things happening at the moment or at the same time. The general form for these, so we know this was just the simple past. This was just the simple past form of a verb, often ending ed, or sometimes in irregular form. This is going to be your will plus your verb, or going to plus a verb. Here, for the present continuous, we have a form of to be, so am, is, are, and so on, plus what's called the present participle. And we're going to talk about participles more later. This is going to be was or were plus the present part, plus the present participle, excuse me. And this will be will, or I am going to, plus the present participle. And again, continuous forms, not super important, but you should know them anyway. All right, the perfect. The perfect definitely appears on the SAT and can be confusing sometimes. So let's talk about where these come into play. Let's start with the present perfect. I have visited Germany 3 times. So notice we have this helping verb again, have, we've got the past participle, and then the action, right? Or I have studied chemistry for 3 months. These can function in different ways. So one of the ways present perfect can function is to show something that's happened at an unspecified time. So I have visited Germany 3 times, sometime in the past, some period, it doesn't matter when exactly, I have done this action, right? So it shows something's happened at an unspecified time. Or this shows something that has happened from the past up to now. So I've studied chemistry for 3 months, assuming we're talking about up to now, right? So it also shows something occurring over time, moving into what's happening now and affecting what's happening now in some way, right? And the way you do this is some form of has, so have or have plus the past participle. This doesn't come up too much, present perfect, but there is one particular error that will use present perfect. Again, cover it specifically in the SAT Math Tactics series. How about for past perfect? I realized that I had forgotten to turn off the toaster, or I had spoken German before I visited Germany. So notice what this does is basically shows order in the past. When you've got multiple things happening in the past, this shows you in what order they occurred in, right? So here, I realized that I had forgotten to turn off the toaster. So I realized sometime in the past that I had forgotten at some point even more in the past to do some kind of action, right? So it shows the order. It shows the ways in which these events occurred. Or I had spoken German before I visited Germany. The before tells us the order, but sometimes you'll also see anyway the past perfect being used, right? So it shows that I'd spoken that language before I visited Germany, right? Again, shows the order about how something happened. The way you construct this is with had plus your past participle. Let's see. What about future perfect? Does not come up much at all, but let's just introduce it here. I will have made 3 sales by the time the hour is up. Again, it shows kind of movement in the past. It shows, again, order in time. By the time some other event happens, something else would have happened. So again, also shows order in time. But again, not something that we much care about. And in fact, if you want to know, you use will plus have plus the verb to do this form, but past participle. But again, don't really need to worry about it. Not really important. For the SAT, this one is indeed important. Past perfect is important. Present perfect, a little bit too, so we'll also put a box around that. Future, not so much. Let's see. Okay, last form is the present continuous, perfect continuous. So it's mixing both the continuous, which by the way is sometimes known as the progressive tense. Right, so perfect continuous, perfect progressive, mixes the two together. I have been waiting for the promotion for 3 years. So notice, again, it shows something, much like some of the uses of the perfect tense here, it shows something has happened over a long period of time in the past and it has led up to now, right? I've been waiting for the promotion for 3 years and I don't want to wait anymore, right? So it shows that progression towards the present and how an event has occurred over time, over that period. I had been walking when the rain began. Again, it shows the order of things, but also shows the continuous nature of that it was interrupted. So I had been walking, I had been doing this activity when I was interrupted by the rain, right? So it's very similar to the continuous tense, with a little difference of showing the order of how things happen and how they're being interrupted. And then finally, future, I will have been driving for 5 hours when we make our first stop. Again, shows in the future there will be this order, there will be this event that's interrupting it, and it will be a continuous action. These, you don't really have to worry about at all. You're never really going to be tested directly about them, on them. The other tenses are much more important. So I'm not even going to give you the forms here. It doesn't matter. If you're curious, look it up. Plenty of information on that. Okay, so those are the basic verb forms. Let me give it a little graphical representation that might help you understand how these all relate to each other. So imagine we've got a timeline where this little dash in the middle means the present, right? It means right now. So to the left of the line is the past, to the right of the line is the future, and so on. So what we're going to do with this is show you how these actions might be represented on these little line graphs. So for instance, the present tense, something happened in the simple present, it's happening right now. So we can put that little X right there. Something happened in the past happened at some definite point in the past, so we can put our X there. Something that will happen in the future is going to happen at some definite time in the future. Okay, no problem. What about the continuous? Remember, continuous shows simultaneity. It shows something happening over a period of time and often being interrupted by something else. So you can imagine for the present tense, I am walking or I am eating when John calls me. It shows some present continuous event that's interrupted by some other event. Whereas in the past, some continuous action interrupted. In the future, it will be some continuous action interrupted by something. Right? So that's the basic idea. It's more, it shows that continuous nature, that it's something that occurs over a period of time rather than something that happens in a definite period of time. The perfect tense, this one is probably, like I said, the more important one to learn here. So we'll draw in our little timelines here. For present perfect, it's got some similarities to the continuous in the sense that it's something that happened over a period of time, but it really is something that happened in some indefinite period of time that comes up and affects some event today, right? So I have visited Germany 3 times, and therefore whatever. Or I have studied chemistry for 3 months, so I hope I will pass tomorrow's test, right? It shows that some event happened in some capacity over the past period of time and may or may not affect what's happening today. With your continuous or your perfect in the past, you can kind of look at it 2 ways. You can look at it as one as just the order of events in the past, right? So this event happened before this event happened. Or you can look at it as, again, something that almost like a continuous, something that's happened over a period of time in the past and therefore affecting some other action in the past as well. But again, really the best way to look at this is just 2 serial actions in the past, one after the other, and this shows you the order in which that occurs. Future perfect is very similar to present perfect in that it's some kind of indefinite action over a period of time that then leads up to some other action to show that order over time. Okay, so last one's perfect continuous, not really very important at all, but I will show it to you. It has a lot of similarities to the perfect tenses and, of course, the continuous, you might expect, because they contain both. But this really emphasizes the continuous nature of an action. So let's start with the present perfect continuous, or the present perfect progressive. This is going to be some continuous event occurring over a period of time that's then interrupted, or that leads up to the current time period. Whereas in the past, it's some continuous action over a period of time leading to an interruption. And in the future, it will be some kind of continuous action over a period of time leading to an interruption. So again, similar in some ways to the perfect, but it's a perfect continuous, right? It is part of the perfect. It is part of the continuous. It's a blend of both. So again, you'll never have to make a decision between, for instance, the perfect continuous and the perfect. That's just crazy. Just know what that is. The ones in the boxes, so that's the simple tenses and a couple of the perfect tenses, are really the important ones to focus on. One other thing before we wrap up is the difference between will and would. So will, remember, is the future tense, right? He will become president of the United States. Would, on the other hand, has got 2 uses. One is the subjunctive, which I'm not going to talk about here. I may talk about it in a later video. But would is about future in the past. So it's something, again, showing the order of something happening in the past. So, for example, Charles was born in 1903 and would become the first circus performer. If we said will here to show that it will eventually happen, that's from the standpoint of today. So Charles was born in 1903 and will become the first circus performer. If Charles was still living today and he would somehow become the first circus performer, then yeah, I suppose that would make sense. But for most sentences in the situation, that's not going to make sense, right? What we're trying to say here, he was born in 1903 and he would go on to, right, in the future, according to that past moment, from 1903 on, he would become the first circus performer. So that's called future in the past, a kind of error you might see occasionally, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so that should be it for tenses. I hope that made some kind of sense. The best thing to do is just look at how the SAT actually tests these questions. And then, so basically check out the SAT Grammar Tactics series, check out the tense videos, and see how those errors are actually tested. Okay, next video.